Welcome to Quiet Story, the quietest corner of YouTube for drifting off to soft-spoken, odd corners of history. Before we begin, take a deep breath and let it go. Let the weight of the day melt into your pillow. Let your limbs grow heavy like overcooked porridge, the good kind, if such a thing exists. In the comments, tell us, where are you watching from? And how long does it usually take for your thoughts to turn into sheep and leap away? Tonight, we begin a slow, scratchy journey through the misunderstood world of medieval dating. It's not a fairy tale. It's not a courtly romance. It's mostly staring, and mud, and mild family pressure. So now, gently close your eyes, and allow yourself to sink into a world where tunics itch, shoes squeak, because they're wooden, and feelings are kept quiet beneath layers of wool and expectation. It is morning, though time is vague here. Not measured by clocks, but by the smell of bread burning in the communal oven. By the low bleat of a sheep with romantic timing. And by the way your mother sighs every time she walks past a marriageable youth. This is where your story begins. The glance across the field. The air smells like yesterday's smoke and wet wool. You're standing just past the boundary where the village tapers off and the commons begin. Your feet are planted in a patch of uneven grass, still damp with morning, though it's hard to tell whether that's dew or something left behind by the animals. You hold your basket in front of you, not because it's heavy. It's filled with dry nettles and a few stubborn bits of root, but because it gives your hands something to do. That, and you've learned not to touch your face when Marian's around. She says it's a sign of weakness. Marian once read half a page of a courtly love poem, and now she's an expert in the field of unspoken desire. You stare across the field. The cooper's boy is there. Again. He's always there, working alone with steady hands and the kind of focus that makes you want to drop things near him, just to see if he'd notice. His tools are worn smooth by generations, and his shirt has a hole in the sleeve, just big enough to show the bend of his elbow. It's the most scandalous thing you've seen all week. He does not know your name. You don't know his, not really. People call him Edric's lad, which is not helpful, because there are 2 Edric families and 3 lads between them. But he's the one with the shoulders, and the frown, and the silent way of sanding down the rim of a barrel as if it's a sacred act. You try not to stare. You fail. He looks up. The glance is fleeting. A flicker. His eyes are the color of weathered wood, or maybe just mud. But for that moment, the world feels slightly rearranged. He doesn't smile. No one really does, not with their teeth. Smiling with your mouth closed is safer. More appropriate. Less likely to attract gossip. He looks back down, and you realize you've stopped breathing. You exhale slowly, careful not to fog the cold air too obviously. Marian is beside you now, chewing a stalk of something bitter. You should walk by, she says without looking. Drop your shawl. I'm wearing my shawl, you reply. Then drop something else. Your dignity, maybe. She snorts. You roll your eyes and glance back toward the cooper's boy. He is already sanding again. A perfect rhythm. As if your entire existence didn't just slightly swerve in his direction. The breeze carries the scent of wood shavings and something vaguely barn-like. It's not unpleasant, just rural. A goat bleats at an odd pitch. Somewhere, someone is yelling at chickens. A cart rolls slowly over the cobbles, pulled by a donkey with a limp and an attitude. It is, you think, a perfectly normal medieval morning, until your mother appears. She is holding a pot. It's unclear what's inside. Curdled milk, most likely, or possibly hope curdled into disappointment. Her eyes follow your gaze. She narrows them, squinting into the distance like a hawk searching for scandal. When she sees the Cooper's boy, she lets out a breath so long you wonder how she held it that long. Then she says nothing. Which is worse? You know that silence. It's the one that comes before a decision is made about you, and you won't be asked for input. You turn away before she can say more. The field has lost its magic. For now. Back home, you're given a task, turning a heavy churn, or grinding dried peas, or maybe peeling something so tough it might actually be bark. Your arms ache, but your mind wanders. What if tomorrow he speaks? What would he say? Nothing too grand. No poetry. No lines from troubadours. That's for nobles and bards. Maybe just, you drop this. Or, you're in my way. Either would be enough. Later, as the fire dims and the corners of the cottage dissolve into soot-colored shadow, you lie on your straw mattress. A chicken is roosting in the loft. Your sister is snoring softly, face turned to the wall. You watch the smoke trail up into the dark and think about glances. That's all you're allowed for now. A glance. Anything more would need a festival. Or a miracle. But a glance is still something. It's a promise made in silence. A secret stitched into the folds of an ordinary day. And in this world of wool and weather, quiet promises are the strongest kind. Festivals and flirting. There is a small wooden bell tied to a cow's neck, and this morning, it rings differently. There is something in the air, not the usual mix of damp straw, chimney smoke, and yesterday's turnip, but something else. Lighter. Dustier. Charged. It's festival day. Once a year, maybe twice if the harvest is generous and the local lord is in an uncharacteristically generous mood, the village transforms. Just a little. Not much. The mud is still there. The geese still honk with profound disapproval. But today, the usual rhythm of survival loosens. Work pauses. Smiles are allowed. People wear colors, dull ones, of course. No one is reckless. But a tunic with a hint of faded blue? Scandalous. You have washed your face. Twice. Marion helped plait your hair. You both agreed it looked better with ribbon. The ribbon was once part of a salt sack. You dyed it with old berries last week, and now it's a faded kind of reddish. Romantic, in the way that scabs are romantic. Outside, the village green has been cleared of most droppings. A few wooden stalls lean into the wind, selling hard things, dried fish, cracked pottery, tiny tarts that taste faintly of onion no matter what's inside. The blacksmith's daughter is pretending to sell charms made of bent nails. A priest eyes her from a distance but says nothing. It's festival day. The Lord forgives many things when they bring in coin. And there he is. The cooper's boy. No tools today. No sanding. No barrels. Just him, standing near the cider barrel with his hands in his sleeves and an expression that suggests he does not want to be here, which only makes him more interesting. You pretend not to notice him. You are absolutely noticing him. A fiddler starts playing. Badly. It's the same song he always plays. No one remembers when he learned it, or if he ever learned a second. But the tune is cheerful in the way a drunk goose is cheerful, off balance, loud, and hard to ignore. Someone pulls you into a circle. The dance begins. It is not graceful. It is not elegant. But it moves. Feet stamp. Arms swing. There's clapping, laughing, the occasional near injury when someone trips over someone else's enthusiasm. You move, hesitantly at first, then more freely. Marion is spinning. The pig boy is grinning at her through a mouthful of boiled grain. Then, a partner is passed your way. And it's him. The cooper's boy. You cannot look directly at him. That would be obvious. But your hands meet, briefly, and his are warm. Rough in the way that means useful, not dangerous. He smells like wood and air. No words are exchanged. That would be too bold. But the corners of his mouth move. Not a smile. Not quite. Just movement. Your hands touch again. Then again. The music stumbles. The fiddler hiccups mid-bow. Someone yells, "More ale!" A dog chases a child who's chasing another child who's chasing a stolen pie. No one notices when you nearly trip. He steadies you. Just briefly. Your eyes meet. It lasts no more than a heartbeat. Maybe two. But in that sliver of a moment, in that space between music and motion, something almost happens. And then it doesn't. Because the dance ends. The circle breaks. Marion pulls you away with wild eyes and whispers something incoherent about the pig boy's hands and how they smell like turnips, but in a good way. You nod politely. You don't hear her. Your ears are still full of the sound of the cooper's boy breathing near you. Quiet and real and steady. Later, as dusk settles and the sky begins to yawn itself toward night, you sit by the fire. Your feet ache. Your cheeks are warm. Your dress smells faintly of smoke, sweat, and spilled cider. Your mother eyes you with suspicion. "Did you dance?" she asks. You nod. She says nothing for a long while. Then, "With Edric's lad?" You say, "Maybe." She nods once slowly. There is no excitement, no squeal of delight, no flood of advice. Just that one nod. That's all you get. That's all you need. In bed, you stare at the ceiling. It's leaking a little. You catch the drip in rhythm with your thoughts. Each drop a memory. Each blink a flicker of what could have been. You danced. He touched your hand. You lived another day. Romance, here, is built like everything else, with patience, with slowness, with care. One glance. One dance. One almost word. That's how it begins. Parentally approved passion. The fire is crackling a little too enthusiastically tonight. Sparks skip up the chimney like they're in a hurry to be free. You're sitting on the stool nearest the hearth, pretending to pick stems out of a basket of wilted greens, a chore that requires more thought than it deserves, while your mother watches you with the long, measured stare of someone conducting a quiet investigation. It has begun. The selection. You knew it was coming. Everyone does. There's a rhythm to it, like the seasons, or the way the bread always burns a little on the left side of the communal oven. One day you're just someone's child. The next, you're a possible bride or groom, a line in a ledger, a piece in a game you didn't know had rules. Your mother clears her throat. That sound is the medieval equivalent of an opening ceremony. "So," she says, though it's not really a question. "Edric's lad. Quiet. Strong arms. Bit too much brow, but maybe it's the lighting." You nod as if you're not paying attention. This is the game. You cannot seem too eager. That would trigger suspicion. You also cannot seem too disinterested. That would trigger concern. Somewhere between faint nod and neutral shrug is the safety zone. You aim for that. "He's the only one who didn't spill stew on himself last festival," she adds. You nod again. Outside, the wind makes the shutters rattle. It's not cold yet, but the kind of evening that warns you it's thinking about becoming cold soon. Your father is somewhere in the corner, asleep with his eyes open. You think. He hasn't blinked in a while, but he's still upright, so probably breathing. Your mother goes on. "There's also Thomas from the lower lane. His family has 3 sheep and a fine door." You try not to smile. The door is indeed fine. It even closes all the way. You've heard rumors it creaks only when the weather changes. which practically makes it a profit. But Thomas smells like damp wheat, and he chews with his mouth open. And once he tried to name his goat after you. Still, your mother likes a solid door. Then comes the ritual. It always happens around the third name she lists. That's when she begins to pace, slowly, meaningfully, as if her footsteps shape destiny. She'll stir the pot on the fire, even if it doesn't need stirring. She'll look at the ceiling, as if divine wisdom might be hidden between the rafters. Then she will say, always in the same tone, "You can't be waiting for some troubadour." And there it is, the death sentence of romance. You can't be waiting for some troubadour. As if that's what you were doing, sitting there, hoping a lute playing, poem spouting noble with perfect teeth and a feathered hat would gallop in and declare his intentions in Middle English. You're not. You know what world this is. You know what time it is. But still, your mind wanders. What if someone chose you for more than your sheep adjacency? What if someone actually noticed the way your hands move when you're weaving? The way you hum when you think no one's listening? The way your eyes search the horizon during walks, as if you're always waiting for something just beyond reach? What if that someone was the Cooper's boy? You haven't spoken. Not really. Not yet. But he looked at you. He caught you during the festival. He saw you trip and didn't laugh. He helped. That counts. Your mother lists 2 more names. One of them is terrifyingly enthusiastic about butter. The other whistles in church. You pretend to consider both. Eventually, she sighs, the kind of sigh that could flatten wheat fields, and says she'll speak to someone tomorrow. That means negotiations may begin. Livestock might be mentioned. Pottery exchanged. A commitment of 3 hens and a pledge not to embarrass the family. You go to bed early. Your straw mattress pokes you in 7 different places, but you don't care. Your thoughts are thick, slow, drowsy things. They wind themselves around imagined conversations. Around futures that haven't happened and probably never will. In your imagination, the Cooper's boy speaks. He says your name. Just once. That's all. No dowries. No goats. No mother's approval. Just your name, said like it matters. That would be enough. But this is not a story about enough. This is a story about reality. And in reality, your mother is going to ask the fishmonger's cousin if his brother is still single, because he has a working roof and his own shoes. And maybe that's what love looks like here. Maybe love is practical, sanctioned, stable, slightly damp. Maybe love is a quiet kind of survival. And maybe, just maybe, it's also hidden in a glance across a field, in a near dance, in a moment where your hand is steady and warm in someone else's. And even if your mother picks your spouse, your heart, perhaps, gets to keep one secret. The language of turnips. It begins, as so many things do here, in silence. Not the gentle, candlelit silence of noble courts or cloisters, where Latin hymns echo softly under vaulted stone. No. This is a working silence. A muddy, creaky, chicken-clucking kind of silence. The kind that smells like wet wool, and broth, and someone's boots drying by the hearth. It is not romantic. Not even close. But in this world, it is sacred. You're in the garden. Technically. It's more of a sloped patch behind your family's hut, part compost heap, part hope. This morning, you are pretending to weed the kale, not for nutritional value, it tastes like regret, but to stay out of sight. Or at least, out of the direct sight of your mother, who is still convinced you could do better than the Cooper's boy and continues to suggest alternatives with increasingly unusual assets. Duncan's got both ears, she whispered last night. And he can count past 10. You press your hands deeper into the soil to keep from laughing. You're not alone in the garden. Someone left something by the edge of the fence. Right where the stone marker leans crookedly against the stump with the old chicken scratchings on it. It's a turnip. A whole one. Unbitten. Unbruised. Cleaned. Next to it, an egg. Warm. Not too warm, not recently laid, but not forgotten either. And most curiously, a single goose feather tucked under a smooth, dark pebble. You stare at it for a long while. The message is clear. Or at least, it would be if you had the proper codebook. But this isn't the first time. You've received strange bundles before. Not often. Just once or twice a season. But they always come when you least expect them, and they're never the same. Last winter, it was 2 acorns and a bit of cloth torn from someone's sleeve. Once, you found 3 wrinkled plums wrapped in a leaf and tucked into your thatch roof. And most memorable, a goat hoof. Not fresh, thankfully. Cleaned. Bleached. Tied with twine. That one, your brother tried to eat. These are not declarations of love in any courtly sense. No parchment. No rhymes. No crushed rose petals or carved hearts. Just objects. Bits of the world made meaningful by the way they are offered. Hidden. Placed carefully. You pick up the turnip. Turn it over in your hands. It's not soft. Someone picked it recently. Possibly him. You glance up the lane, toward the Cooper's cottage. You think you see movement, not a wave, not a gesture. Just the shadow of someone turning away quickly. A hand disappearing behind a shutter. Your heart does something. You won't say what. That would be indecent. You carry the gift inside. Your mother eyes it suspiciously. We have turnips, she says, as if this one is somehow redundant. You nod. I know. She frowns. Who's leaving you produce? You shrug. Is it that Thomas? He's got away with tubers. You shrug again, a little too quickly. Now she's certain it's Thomas. Which means she'll begin planning the wedding by midweek. But you know. That turnip wasn't from Thomas. That egg wasn't from someone who chews loudly and whistles in church. That goose feather? That's a signature. A private symbol in a world that doesn't have ink. These are not love letters. They are something deeper. Older. This is the language of turnips. Because here, there are no words for wanting someone. No place for gentle confessions or forehead kisses. No time for poetry. But there are gestures. Small ones. Like slipping a bit of bread to someone in the dark. Like placing a stone where only one other person will see it. Like standing a little too long in the rain while someone else gathers herbs nearby. These are the things you remember. These are the sentences you write in silence. That night you can't sleep. You lie on your side, staring into the dark, fingering the edge of the turnip where it narrows. It's heavier than it looks. Solid. Honest. A promise, maybe? Or just dinner? It doesn't matter. Because you understood. And maybe, just maybe, he knows you understood. Tomorrow, you will leave something of your own. You don't know what yet. A feather feels like copying. A rock feels too impersonal. Maybe a clover. A perfect one. Or a plum stone from last year's jar. The one you saved because it looked like a heart if you squinted. Or maybe nothing. Maybe just your shadow near his path. Maybe that's enough. Because love in your world is quiet. Love is edible. Love is made of eggs, dirt, and root vegetables. Love is a turnip left by a fence when no one is watching. And that's more than most get. Sundays after Mass. The bells begin before you're fully awake. That particular clang, dull, distant, and slightly out of tune, threads its way through dreams and into the reluctant awareness of morning. It is not a sharp sound. It does not command. It invites, quietly, but firmly. The bells are older than you. Older than your father. Older, some say, than the tree growing sideways behind the rectory. You never question them. You rise. The air inside the cottage is cold enough to bite. You wrap your shawl more tightly. The smock you've chosen is newly mended, just enough patchwork to show care, but not so much as to scream desperation. The neckline is modest, but not severe. The sleeves? Just long enough to look delicate when folded over each other in prayer. You pretend it's about piety. It isn't. Outside, the village begins its slow shuffle toward the chapel. People appear like mist, emerging from doorways and alleys, pressed between stone fences and bundles of drying herbs. Old women with tight mouths. Boys flicking dirt at each other when they think no one's looking. A man coughing like thunder. A piglet squealing somewhere it shouldn't be. And him. You see him before he sees you. At least, you think he hasn't seen you. You hope he hasn't. And then you hope he has. The cooper's boy. His hair is wet. Combed. Someone, probably his mother, made him wash. His tunic is tucked too neatly. That means effort. And effort means something. You step carefully across the uneven stone path leading to the chapel. Your feet know the rhythm. One flat, one jagged, skip the mossy one. You don't look at him. Not yet. You walk past like you haven't noticed. But your eyes flicker sideways. Just enough to catch the shape of his shoulder, the line of his jaw. He's taller than you remembered. Or maybe you're just standing up straighter today. Inside, it smells like beeswax, old wood, and damp cloth. The benches are hard. The draft is predictable, always from the left, always when the sermon goes long. You take your place beside your cousin, who has no idea she's sitting beside a theater of emotion. The priest begins. Latin rolls out over the pews like fog, dense, unreachable, vaguely divine. You mouth the words. Most of them. Your voice is quiet, reverent, composed. But your heart isn't. It's running. Because he's 3 benches behind you. To the left. Diagonally. The place where men stand if they're pretending to be devout while secretly trying to see who's here. You resist turning around. Instead, you let your hand rest just so on your lap, fingers tucked but visible, sleeve drawn back just slightly. The edge of your smock shows, new thread, careful stitching, the kind that says, I have value, but not, I'm desperate. That's a fine line to walk. During the sermon, the priest warns against vanity. Of course he does. He always does, just when someone's wearing something slightly different. You lower your gaze, pretend to look abashed. But secretly you hope, deeply, wildly, that he saw. The cooper's boy. Did he? You won't know. Not today. After Mass, the chapel empties slowly. Bodies squeeze past each other in that overly polite, slightly anxious way that only happens in holy places. Everyone murmurs. Everyone nods. Everyone talks about weather and butter and Cousin Hilda's lame cow. But not you. You walk with your family. You keep your eyes down. And just as you're about to step onto the lane, something happens. A pause. A glance. A beat too long between steps. You feel it. You don't see it, not directly. But there, in your periphery, is a shape moving just a little slower. Just behind you. Not close enough to speak. Not far enough to be indifferent. He's behind you. Matching your pace. Maybe on purpose. You turn left at the corner by the well. He continues straight. But before you part ways, there is a brush of sound, not a word, not a name, just the slightest hitch in breath. That's enough. Back home, your mother comments on your silence. You smile softly. Say you're thinking of the sermon. She nods approvingly. But your thoughts are elsewhere. They are still walking the dusty lane, still turning left, still wondering if a breath was meant for you. And next Sunday, as the bells call again, you'll wear the smock with a different thread. A red one, maybe? Small. Almost invisible. Just in case someone is watching. And maybe, quietly, they'll understand. Dowries and dilemmas. The first soft light of dawn seeps through the gaps in the wooden shutters, painting golden stripes on the earthen floor. The village is stirring slowly, the distant crow of a rooster, the low murmur of someone lighting a fire, the occasional clink of a bucket being set down near the well. The world outside moves with gentle purpose, but inside your small room, a quiet tension settles like a heavy cloak. You sit on the edge of your narrow bed, the straw mattress prickling beneath your linen shift. Your fingers nervously trace the folds of your smock, fresh from your mother's skilled hands, patched carefully where the fabric once frayed, sturdy but humble. It's the kind of garment that says, "I am ready," without shouting it to the world. Your heart flutters, a restless bird in a cage, because today is a day unlike any other. Today, your family will talk about your dowry. The word alone feels like a stone dropped into the still pond of your thoughts. Dowry, a weight, a promise, a bargaining chip. You try to imagine your heart as something that can be owned, carried, or traded. But it feels wild and untamed, secret even to yourself. Still, your dowry is different. Your dowry is no secret. It belongs not just to you, but to many hands and many eyes. To your father, who wakes before the sun, his fingers cracked and calloused from years of tilling the soil and tending to the animals. His gaze is steady but tired. He will speak with the groom's father about the price your family must pay, the gifts to seal the alliance. To your mother, who has spent countless evenings by the flickering hearth, sewing tiny stitches into shirts and dresses, weaving baskets from reeds, drying herbs, and preserving the harvest. She watches you now with a mixture of pride and sorrow, because this dowry is as much her work as yours, a legacy passed silently from one woman to the next. To your brothers, who may one day inherit the fields and animals, but for now guard the farmstead and uphold the family's honor. To the neighbors, the village, the community that will watch every step you take from now on. Your dowry is not the stuff of fairy tales, no shining jewels, no delicate lace, no silk ribbons that flutter like wings. Instead, it is woven from the hard, honest threads of everyday life, bolts of rough linen, jars of honey thick and sweet from the wild bees, baskets sturdy enough to carry eggs without breaking, a small clutch of chickens to cluck and peck. These are your promises. Your dowry is a collection of things that say, "I can keep a fire alive. I can mend torn clothes. I can feed a family through winter." It is both a gift and a contract. The weight of this knowledge settles on your shoulders as your mother enters the room, carrying a small wooden box. The dowry chest. She sets it on the table with careful hands. You open it, revealing bundles wrapped in cloth, skeins of thread dyed deep blue and red, a carved wooden comb, a small bone-handled knife, jars of herbs gathered from the meadow. Each item holds a story, a meaning, a future. Your fingers linger on the comb, smooth, worn by generations of women. "Are you ready?" your mother asks softly. You nod, but your voice catches in your throat. Later, you sit beside your mother and father as they meet with the Cooper's family. The men speak in low tones, weighing livestock, land, debts, and favors, their words like stones dropped into a well, rippling but never fully heard by you. You realize, with a sudden ache, that your dowry is more than a collection of goods. It is a key, a passage, a burden. That night, lying beneath the patchwork quilt, you wonder about your heart again. Is it yours alone? Or is it already pledged, wrapped, and tied like the bundles in your dowry chest? You close your eyes and let yourself dream, just for a moment, of a dowry made not of goods, but of whispered secrets shared beneath the stars, of stolen glances in the fading light, of hands held tight in the quiet of the night. But when you open them, the dowry chest waits, silent and patient. Tomorrow, the village will watch, and your life will begin anew. Courting at the bakehouse. The village bakehouse stands quietly at the edge of the cottages, a sturdy stone building blackened by years of soot, smoke, and flour dust. Its wooden door creaks softly as you push it open, stepping into a world warm with the comforting smell of baking bread. The early morning light filters through the small, grimy windows, catching motes of flour that drift lazily in the air. The fire inside the great stone oven glows fiercely, casting dancing shadows across the rough wooden beams overhead. The heat wraps around you like a soft blanket, chasing away the morning chill that still clings stubbornly to the outside world. The baker's apprentice is already there, kneading a large lump of dough with practiced hands. His sleeves are rolled up, forearms dusted white, face flushed with warmth and effort. The rhythm of his movements is steady, almost hypnotic, as he presses and folds the dough again and again. Your eyes meet briefly, a quick spark in the quiet morning. Neither of you speaks at first. Words feel heavy and unnecessary here. Instead, the silence itself hums with a kind of gentle electricity. You watch as he slides a tray of loaves into the oven. Some are perfectly golden, their crusts crackling invitingly. Others bear darker, almost burned patches, reminders that even the best bakers sometimes meet with imperfection. He notices your gaze resting on the imperfect loaves and grins. "Not all bread comes out perfect," he says softly, his voice low and roughened by flour and early hours. "Sometimes the best things come from a little burnt edge." You smile, a warmth blooming in your chest beyond the oven's heat. You step closer to the counter, reaching for a still warm roll. Your fingers brush his as you both reach for the same loaf, just for a moment, enough to send a subtle thrill rippling through you. Is this love? Or just the shared comfort of a quiet place, early morning warmth, and a mutual fondness for bread, even if it's slightly charred? In a village like yours, courting is slow and careful. It moves not in rushed declarations or bold gestures but in shared moments, a stolen glance, a soft smile, a hand lingering a second longer on the wooden table. The apprentice shifts the loaf toward you. "Here, try this one. It's a bit crusty, but the inside is soft. Like life, a bit rough around the edges, but worth the bite." You laugh softly, warmth spreading across your cheeks. "Sounds like a good way to live." You talk quietly as the morning progresses. The baker tells you about the stubborn village cat that insists on curling up near the oven, refusing to be shooed away. You tell him about the market's new shipment of dried herbs. The conversation is simple, yet charged, every word a thread weaving a delicate connection. Between the clatter of wooden spoons, the crackle of the oven fire, and the rising warmth, something delicate blooms in the space between you. The door creaks again, and a few villagers enter, breaking the moment with greetings and chatter. You exchange a final look with the apprentice before the moment slips away like the last crumb of fresh bread. But tomorrow you'll return. Not just for the bread, but for the warmth, the quiet understanding, and perhaps the faint hope that lingers like the scent of yeast and smoke in the air. The role of chaperones. The late afternoon sun drapes the village in a warm, amber glow. Dust motes float gently in the slow-moving air, drifting lazily over cobblestone paths and dirt lanes where the footprints of countless villagers have gathered like a patchwork quilt. The scent of hay mingles with the faint aroma of wood smoke, a reminder of hearth fires lighting up the coming evening. You step outside your cottage, heart beating just a little faster than usual. Today is special, a day marked in your mind by quiet anticipation. You are to take a stroll with the young man you've been secretly admiring, a slow walk meant to kindle the earliest sparks of something more than friendship. But in this world, such moments are never simple or private. Trailing closely behind you are your three aunts, Aunt Beatrice, Aunt Judith, and Aunt Margaret. Their skirts rustle softly as they move, their eyes sharp and unyielding, a shield of watchfulness wrapped tightly around you. The eldest, Aunt Beatrice, carries a wooden staff and walks with measured steps, her expression stern but not unkind. Aunt Judith hums a soft tune under her breath, a habit she keeps to soothe both herself and those around her. Aunt Margaret, the youngest, carries a small basket with a stitched handkerchief tucked inside, her eyes flickering between you and the young man with a mixture of curiosity and protectiveness. At their side trots an old sheepdog, its fur mottled with gray and white, tail wagging lazily but eyes keen and alert. The dog is as much a part of this solemn procession as the aunts themselves, a silent guardian watching for any sign of impropriety. The young man walks beside you, his posture stiff with nervousness. His hands are tucked into his coarse woolen sleeves, fingers occasionally brushing against the folds as he tries to steady himself. His cheeks are flushed a deep red, a mixture of embarrassment and excitement, but his eyes hold a quiet determination. This is how courtship looks in your village, a carefully choreographed dance under the watchful gaze of family and community. There are no stolen moments, no whispered secrets in the shadows. Every smile, every step, every exchanged word is measured and observed, weighed for its propriety and meaning. You walk slowly down the dirt path that winds past fields of golden wheat, the stalks bending slightly in the gentle breeze, their rustling sound like a soft lullaby. Alongside the path, wildflowers bloom in untamed clusters, delicate bluebells, bright yellow buttercups, and shy white daisies, their colors a quiet rebellion against the order of village life. The aunts walk slightly behind, their voices low but unmistakable. "Keep your elbows close," Aunt Beatrice mutters, her voice carrying the authority of years spent watching over young women in the village. "No reaching or holding hands before the right time." Aunt Judith nods in agreement, adding, "Remember, young lady, your reputation is the finest jewel you carry." The young man stammers a polite greeting, trying to appear confident despite the heavy scrutiny. You find yourself chatting about the weather, the promise of a warm harvest season, the stubborn clouds that threatened rain last week. The conversation is stilted but genuine, an exchange of small, safe topics that nonetheless bring a comforting rhythm to the walk. Every so often, your eyes meet his. For a heartbeat, the weight of the aunt's presence seems to lift, and you catch a glimpse of the shy affection in his gaze. You want to reach out, to brush your fingers against his sleeve, to share a smile unguarded by watchful eyes. But Aunt Margaret clears her throat, and the moment fades like mist. The sheepdog trots ahead, occasionally stopping to sniff the air or chase after a fluttering leaf, its presence a constant reminder that this walk is less about secret passion and more about public propriety. As you near the village square, the chatter of neighbors grows louder. Heads turn, and eyes flick toward your little procession with knowing smiles and quiet nods. They understand the ritual unfolding before them, the delicate balance between affection and decorum, desire and duty. The walk ends with a polite bow, a few whispered promises, and a reluctant farewell. You retreat back into your cottage, cheeks flushed not just from the warmth of the day but from the strange mix of hope and restraint that colors your thoughts. Later, lying beneath your patchwork quilt, you think of the aunt's steady presence, the soft thud of the sheepdog's paws on the dirt path, and the quiet thrill of a glance shared under watchful eyes. Love in your village is not the sweeping romance sung by poets. It is a cautious, measured dance performed in the full light of day, with 3 aunties and a sheepdog as your ever-present audience. Tokens and trinkets. In the slow rhythm of medieval village life, where days were long and filled with the labors of tending fields, weaving cloth, and caring for livestock, moments of tender affection were rare and precious. Without the luxury of private conversations or the freedom to express feelings openly, love found its subtle language in small tokens and trinkets, tiny objects imbued with meaning far beyond their humble appearance. Imagine the soft dawn light spilling through a lattice window, dust motes dancing lazily in the beams as you awaken to the scent of freshly baked bread and the distant bleating of sheep. On the rough wooden table near your bed lies a small bundle, wrapped in a worn cloth of faded blue linen. Your fingers tremble slightly as you unwrap it, revealing a slender ribbon, dyed in a deep, rich crimson. The fabric is soft from repeated handling, its edges frayed ever so slightly, and it carries the faint scent of wild lavender and fresh pine needles. This ribbon is not just a piece of cloth, it is a message woven in color and fragrance. A promise, an invitation, a silent confession. In a world where words were weighed and measured, and public displays of affection were forbidden, such a gift spoke volumes. It whispered of secret meetings by the river bank, stolen glances in the marketplace, and hearts beating fast beneath the watchful eyes of chaperones. Alongside the ribbon lies a small wooden spoon, carefully carved from a single piece of oak. Its handle is etched with delicate patterns, swirling vines, tiny blossoms, and a small heart tucked into the grain. The craftsmanship is modest but sincere, each groove and curve a testament to hours spent working by candlelight. This spoon is more than a utensil. It is a symbol of sharing and sustenance, a tangible token of the hope that one day you might sit side by the hearth, breaking bread and sharing quiet moments in a home built together. You remember the young man who gave it to you, his hands rough from work, his eyes shy but earnest as he slipped the spoon into your palm during the village fair. The exchange was quick, almost secretive, but beneath the surface was a current of hope and desire. His heart was in that gift, humble and sincere. Tokens like ribbons and carved spoons were the love letters of the medieval world, small enough to pass unnoticed but filled with meaning understood by both giver and receiver. Flowers were often too fragile to carry, and precious jewels belonged to the wealthy and were often given with expectations or strings attached. But a ribbon, a spoon, or a sprig of rosemary could be hidden in a sleeve, pinned inside a cloak, or left quietly on a doorstep, a secret language only the two of you spoke. These gifts came with unspoken rules. Too few, and feelings might be doubted. Too many, and gossip would spread like wildfire. A gift had to be just right, modest, meaningful, respectful of social boundaries yet rich with personal significance. Sometimes a simple hand-woven bracelet, dyed with colors symbolizing love and loyalty, would be exchanged. Other times, a pouch of dried herbs, lavender for devotion, thyme for courage, rosemary for remembrance, would be passed with a smile and a hopeful glance. Even the smallest trinket, a carved wooden bird, a pressed flower tucked between pages of a prayer book, carried stories of affection and promise. These objects were cherished, hidden away as treasures in the quiet hours of the night, reminders that love could flourish even in the harshest of times. Gifts were also a way to navigate the delicate dance of courtship under the watchful eyes of family and village. A token could show intention without breaking decorum, a silent promise that spoke louder than any public declaration. Receiving a ribbon might mean that you were being considered seriously, while a carved spoon might hint at a desire for a future shared life. You hold these tokens close, feeling their weight not just in your hands but in your heart. They are anchors in a world of uncertainty, symbols that your feelings are real and returned. When days grow cold and work is hard, these small objects offer warmth, a quiet connection across the distance of social rules and daily toil. Love in medieval times was built on patience, subtlety, and the language of tokens and trinkets. It was a love expressed in the gentle curve of a carved spoon, the soft color of a ribbon, the scent of pressed herbs, fragile yet enduring, simple yet profound. When courtship meant contracts, you and romance, your parents and 5 legal witnesses. In medieval times, courtship was a serious affair, far from the casual dating or quiet conversations we might imagine today. It was a binding legal process, where the feelings of 2 people were only part of a much larger equation involving families, property, and social standing. When you and your beloved agreed to court, it wasn't just a personal promise. It was a formal contract, witnessed and enforced by the community. Picture the scene. You stand nervously in a crowded hall or perhaps the local church, dressed in your best clothes, the weight of the moment pressing on your shoulders. Around you are your parents, some beaming with pride, others with a more calculating look, knowing the significance of this agreement. Nearby, 5 witnesses stand solemnly, ready to confirm every word, every vow spoken between you. These witnesses weren't mere bystanders. They were essential to the process, often respected elders, local officials, or trusted neighbors whose presence guaranteed that the contract was legitimate and binding. Their role was to ensure that neither side could later deny the promises made, an early form of legal protection for what was essentially a marriage contract. The contract itself was detailed and carefully crafted. It outlined not only the intention to marry but also the terms of the union. Dowries were a central part of the agreement, specifying what the bride's family would provide, whether in money, land, livestock, or goods. The timing of the wedding might also be set, as well as conditions in case of illness, death, or disagreement. There could be penalties for breaking the contract, designed to deter any second thoughts. For you, standing in that room, the contract might feel overwhelming. This was not a simple promise between 2 hearts. It was a public declaration with legal power. Love and personal choice were often secondary to family duty and social expectations. Your parents might have negotiated the terms with the other family well before you even met your future spouse. Your voice, your feelings, might barely have been considered. Romantic ideals, as we understand them today, were rare luxuries. Many couples met for the first time on their wedding day or shortly before. Sometimes, affection grew afterward. Other times, marriages remained purely practical arrangements. The community's interest was intense. This was not just about 2 individuals but about families uniting, forging alliances, and securing futures. A well-negotiated contract could boost a family's status or wealth, while a poorly arranged one could lead to scandal or loss. The legal nature of courtship also brought its own complications. If either party tried to back out, disputes could arise, sometimes even violent ones. Laws existed to protect the parties involved, and witnesses played a crucial role in settling these conflicts. Their testimonies could confirm whether the promises were made freely and clearly. For you, caught between the personal and the political, the experience might have been confusing and intense. The hope for love mingled with the fear of failure. You learned that romance in medieval times was never just private. It was woven into the fabric of society and governed by rules far beyond your control. As you lie down tonight, imagine yourself in that crowded room, feeling the eyes of your family and neighbors, the seriousness of the witnesses, the weight of promises etched into paper or simply spoken aloud. Feel the blend of hope, duty, and uncertainty, the medieval courtship contract, where love met law, and your future was no longer just your own. Forbidden love by the millstream. In the steady, measured pace of medieval village life, every day was much like the last: chores, prayers, market visits, and the ever-watchful eyes of family and neighbors. Privacy was rare, and gossip traveled faster than the wind. In such a tightly woven community, finding a moment alone with someone you cared for could feel nearly impossible. That's where the millstream came in, a small, winding creek just beyond the village borders, where water slipped quietly over smooth stones and willow branches dipped into the flow. It was the perfect place for secret meetings, a hidden world tucked away from prying eyes and wagging tongues. Imagine slipping away from the crowded village square after the evening meal, heart pounding as you sneak past your mother's watchful gaze or a grumbling older brother. The path to the millstream is rough, tangled with thorns and tall grasses, but you know it well. Each step brings you closer to your forbidden love. The air smells faintly of moss and earth, mixed with the sweet scent of wildflowers that bloom along the banks. Here, in this soft, shadowed corner of the world, you can finally breathe freely, away from the harsh rules and expectations of the village. The millstream wasn't just a hiding place, it was a world unto itself. Beneath the branches of ancient willows and alders, you and your beloved shared stolen moments, shy smiles, whispered promises, and trembling hands. Perhaps you laughed softly as your fingers brushed against one another, the water babbling a gentle soundtrack to your secret romance. Maybe you carved your initials into a smooth stone or pressed a wild flower into a folded leaf, small tokens of affection that carried weight far beyond their modest appearance. But love by the millstream was fraught with risk. Your families might be sworn enemies, locked in long-standing feuds over land, livestock, or old insults. Maybe your parents had other plans for you, arranged matches to strengthen alliances or boost status. Or perhaps the difference was more practical. You came from a poorer family, or your beloved's reputation was tarnished by scandal. Whatever the reason, the millstream was your refuge from disapproval and danger. The route to your secret spot was narrow and treacherous. Brambles scratched your arms, slippery rocks tested your footing, and the dark sometimes seemed to press in on you. Every rustle in the bushes could be an animal, or worse, a nosy neighbor or angry relative on patrol. The thrill of almost being caught added urgency to your meetings, making every moment precious and fleeting. Despite the danger, you met as often as you dared, clutching small gifts like wild onions or a carved wooden spoon, humble symbols of a love that refused to be hidden. You shared dreams of a future together, imagining a life beyond the village's strict rules, a world where your love was not a secret but a source of joy and pride. Yet the millstream also stood as a symbol of quiet rebellion. Each rendezvous was an act of defiance against the rigid social order, a way to claim a little piece of freedom in a world where choices were often made for you. It was a place where love was raw, urgent, and fiercely hopeful, even if it had to stay silent. But danger loomed close. If caught, the consequences could be harsh. Punishments ranged from stern scoldings and public shaming to physical reprimands or enforced separation. Families might tighten control, arranging marriages even more quickly, or imposing strict curfews. The millstream's gentle waters could not wash away the risk, but for you, those secret meetings were worth every peril. As you close your eyes tonight, picture the soft rush of the water, the cool breeze stirring the leaves, and the warmth of a hand held tightly in the dark. Feel the mixture of hope and fear, the sweetness of forbidden love blooming quietly beside the millstream. In this hidden, hushed corner of medieval life, love whispered fiercely, even when it had to stay silent. Love letters without literacy. Who needs words when you can send a stick and hope they get the message? In an age when reading and writing were skills reserved for the clergy, nobles, or the very lucky few, most villagers found themselves cut off from the world of written communication. This presented a unique challenge for those seeking to express something as delicate and complex as love. Without letters full of flowing words or poetic verses, medieval lovers had to get creative, inventing a language made of objects, gestures, and symbols that spoke louder than any spoken word. Imagine yourself longing to confess your feelings, yet unable to pen them down. How do you tell someone they occupy your thoughts when your village has no scribes, and books are as rare as gold? Instead, you collect simple, everyday items imbued with secret meaning: a sprig of rosemary for remembrance, a handful of wildflowers plucked from the meadow, or a carved stick etched with symbols that only you and your beloved understand. These humble objects became your love letters, carrying your message through the hands of trusted messengers or hidden in places only your partner would know. The stick, in particular, was a fascinating medium. It was not just any stick but one carefully selected, perhaps a slender, straight piece of willow or a twisted branch from a nearby oak. Its shape, weight, and even the markings you carved into its surface could convey a variety of emotions. A bent twig might mean, "Wait," or "Not now," while a perfectly straight one symbolized hope and commitment. You might etch your initials entwined with a heart, a cross, or even a tiny animal figure, a secret code as precious as any written vow. Delivery was an adventure in itself. Your message might be entrusted to a trusted neighbor, a young child, or a roaming peddler, who knew how to avoid prying eyes and ears. Sometimes the stick or gift would be left in a secret nook, tucked behind a loose stone near the village well, slipped beneath a windowsill, or hidden in a hollow tree near the millstream. Each delivery carried a rush of excitement and fear. Would your beloved find it? Would they understand your message? Would someone else discover your secret? Gifts often accompany these tokens, not flowers or chocolates, but practical things like eggs, onions, or scraps of cloth, each with its own symbolic meaning. A goat's hoof might seem an odd choice today, but back then it represented fertility or good fortune. The way these items were given, with a certain timing, gesture, or location, layered meaning upon meaning, allowing lovers to speak volumes without uttering a single word. However, this language of objects was not without its pitfalls. Without the clarity of text, messages could easily be misunderstood. What was intended as a hopeful sign might be taken as rejection. A carefully carved symbol could be misread, or a gift meant as affection might seem like an insult if delivered at the wrong moment. Such miscommunications sometimes led to confusion or heartbreak, making face-to-face encounters essential to clarify feelings, and adding tension and urgency to every meeting. Despite the challenges, these nonverbal love letters created a slow-burning romance full of mystery, patience, and trust. They demanded creativity and courage, requiring lovers to put faith in the power of simple symbols and in each other's understanding. In a world without quick messages or written declarations, this was how bonds were built, quietly, secretly, yet deeply. So tonight, as you settle into your pillow, picture yourself holding a rough, weathered stick, a messenger of your heart's secret. Feel the weight of unspoken words, the hope that your beloved will recognize the symbols carved into its surface, and the thrill of a love communicated not through letters or language, but through shared signs that bridge silence and distance across the fields and forests of medieval life. Jealousy, jousting, and jams. Even in the quiet, muddy villages and bustling castles of medieval times, love was rarely simple or straightforward. Jealousy, rivalry, and tangled emotions created a complicated web of relationships. Just like today, love triangles were a timeless source of drama and tension. Although medieval life lacked modern plumbing, smartphones, or social media to amplify these feelings, passions ran just as hot, and the consequences could be just as intense. Picture a lively village gathering or a festive fair, where everyone dressed in their finest garments, the smell of roasting meats, fresh bread, and sweet honey hanging heavy in the air. In this vibrant, noisy atmosphere, subtle glances and shy smiles often carried the weight of deep desire. The object of affection might be a charming baker's son, a newly arrived knight boasting tales of distant battles, or the weaver's daughter with sparkling eyes and a quick wit. No matter who it was, they frequently found themselves at the center of competing admirers, each vying for their attention and affection. Jealousy was far from a private matter in medieval times. It could spark public confrontations, petty gossip, and heated arguments that rippled through the community like wildfire. Rival suitors might openly challenge each other's honor and status, sometimes even resorting to physical contests to prove who was worthy. While grand jousting tournaments are often romanticized, in everyday village life, these contests could be more rustic. Rough wrestling matches, mock battles, or friendly competitions held in muddy fields before eager, cheering crowds. Winning these contests was more than a matter of pride. It was a way to impress the one you loved and stake your claim. But love rivalries didn't just stay on the battlefield or in the village square. They also played out in the kitchens and markets in surprisingly clever and sometimes petty ways. Jams, pies, and other homemade treats became unexpected weapons of romantic sabotage. Imagine sneaking a bitter herb or an extra pinch of salt into a rival's carefully prepared preserve, or accidentally knocking over a basket of fruit at the market. Each small act carried a sharp message. These seemingly minor incidents could stir gossip, create tension, and lead to more serious consequences as news spread through whispered conversations by the hearth or during church gatherings. The social dynamics of love triangles were complicated further by the watchful eyes of chaperones, family members, and village elders, all eager to protect their chosen one's honor and reputation. Disputes might erupt in the market square, church, or during feasts, with neighbors taking sides and community bonds tested. Despite all the drama and rivalry, moments of secret tenderness and stolen kisses persisted, proving that love, complicated, messy, and fiercely competitive, always found a way to thrive. What's truly fascinating is how, despite the lack of modern distractions and technologies, the core emotions of romantic rivalry remained unchanged across centuries. Jealousy, the urge to compete, and the desperate desire to prove oneself worthy of love were as raw and real in medieval times as they are today. These timeless feelings remind us that, at its heart, the human experience of love has long been a battlefield where courage, vulnerability, and passion collide. So tonight, as you settle down and close your eyes, imagine the muddy fields where young men wrestled fiercely for a single glance, the whispered threats exchanged behind kitchen doors, and the secret rendezvous beneath moonlit skies. Feel the heat of jealousy burning quietly in the background, the thrill of competition mixing with the sweetness of stolen moments and unexpected jams, all parts of the intricate, enduring dance of medieval romance. Longing and lice. Romance is itchy in more ways than one. In the medieval world, the idea of romance was often a patchwork of tender feelings tangled with very real, often uncomfortable, physical realities. Longing for a loved one wasn't wrapped in the soft perfumes and delicate touches of modern times. Instead, it came with a persistent itch, quite literally. Hygiene in the Middle Ages was not what we would call thorough by today's standards. Bathing was rare and often seasonal. Clothes were worn for extended periods without washing, and lice were an almost inevitable part of daily life for nearly everyone. Imagine a young villager carefully braiding her hair early in the morning, hoping that the boys she admires will notice her effort during Sunday Mass or at the local market. Her heart flutters with hope, but beneath the surface lies a constant, maddening reality: the tiny lice burrowing in her scalp, the invisible tormentors that bite and itch relentlessly. This is the unspoken side of medieval love, affection mingled with discomfort, desire shadowed by persistent irritation. Lice infestations were a widespread plague in medieval Europe. Large families often lived crammed into small wooden homes, with little opportunity for privacy or cleanliness. Bedding and clothing were shared and rarely cleaned, creating the perfect breeding ground for lice. These pests were more than just annoying. Their bites could cause painful sores and lead to infections, which, in a time without antibiotics, could become serious health issues. Despite this, medieval people continued to pursue love and intimacy, accepting lice as an inevitable, if unpleasant, companion. To combat this, medieval people developed various strategies, some based on superstition, others on herbal knowledge. Mothers and sisters often spent long hours combing through hair with fine-toothed combs, hunting for lice and nits in a ritual that combined care with desperation. Herbal concoctions brewed from lavender, rosemary, wormwood, and rue were applied to hair and clothes in the hopes of repelling lice and masking body odors. In some households, smoky rooms were created by hanging clothes and bedding over smoldering fires or aromatic herbs to fumigate them. Still, these efforts were only partially effective, and infestations frequently returned, forcing lovers to accept the itch as part of their shared experience. Beyond the physical discomfort, the emotional aspect of longing was complicated by social and logistical barriers. Many medieval couples were separated by work, family obligations, or arranged marriages. Letters were precious and rare, often carried by trusted messengers and written by those who could read and write, which was not common. Meetings were furtive and brief, filled with a mix of excitement and anxiety. When lovers finally reunited, their embraces were tinged with the knowledge that their bodies carried more than just affection. The grime, sweat, and yes, the lice, were silent witnesses to their harsh realities. This blend of hardship and tenderness created a unique form of intimacy. To love in medieval times was to accept every aspect of a person, their hopes and fears, their beauty and their burdens, including the literal itch of lice. The small acts of care, like gently combing a lover's hair to remove pests or sharing a blanket despite the risk of infestation, became profound gestures of affection. Sitting close by the hearth, sharing warmth against the cold and the discomfort, symbolized a deep bond beyond words. Even amid the itch and dirt, moments of joy and celebration punctuated medieval romance. Festivals, fairs, and church gatherings offered chances to meet, dance, and steal glances away from watchful eyes. Secret meetings by moonlight, quick kisses behind haystacks, and whispered promises under ancient trees filled hearts with hope. The lice were part of the package, unpleasant but unavoidable, making each tender moment even more precious and real. As you settle into your quiet space tonight, picture the scene vividly. A young couple in their humble village home, the flicker of candlelight casting shadows on rough wooden walls. One hand combs through tangled hair, searching carefully for the tiny creatures that cause so much misery, while the other hand holds tight, anchoring a fragile moment of closeness. Imagine the mixed feelings, the itch, the warmth, the longing, and the quiet joy of connection that persists despite everything. This is medieval love in its rawest form, imperfect, persistent, and utterly human. So as you drift off, carry with you this strange, beautiful image of love that endures even through discomfort and adversity. It's a timeless reminder that the heart's yearning cannot be stopped by lice or dirt. It will find a way to reach out, to hold on, and to hope. The betrothal announcement. In medieval times, the moment when two young people's lives were officially linked was no casual affair. The betrothal announcement marked the formal beginning of a lifelong commitment, or at least, that was the ideal. It was a public, often loud, and sometimes nerve-wracking event that changed everything for the couple involved. Unlike modern dating, which is usually private and driven by personal feelings, betrothal was a social, family, and legal contract, binding not only two individuals but entire families and communities. Imagine you are standing in the village square, your heart pounding in your chest as the village priest or lord formally announces your betrothal to the gathered crowd. It's a day of celebration but also of heavy expectations and serious consequences. The villagers, Your neighbors, friends, and even distant relatives are all witnesses. Their whispers, glances, and judgments fill the air, weighing on your shoulders like the heavy cloak you're wearing. The very atmosphere hums with anticipation, gossip already swirling in hushed tones. Betrothal was no mere promise to marry in the future. It was, in many ways, a legal contract sealed with words, tokens, and sometimes the exchange of dowries. This announcement meant that your futures were intertwined, that your families were now allies or partners, and that your personal freedom would soon shift under the careful watch of your elders. The excitement and hope of love mingled with the reality of duty, responsibility, and sometimes fear. For the young couple, this announcement could be thrilling and terrifying at the same time. Your private feelings were suddenly exposed to public scrutiny. Questions from curious relatives or nosy neighbors might bombard you. Do you truly know this person? Are you ready for this? What will your family say? The answers weren't always easy. Love might have blossomed, or the arrangement could have been made entirely by your parents, sometimes without even consulting you. The role of parents and family was paramount. In many cases, the betrothal was arranged to strengthen alliances, secure property, or improve social standing. Your family's honor and prosperity were wrapped up in the success of this union. Dowries were discussed openly, often becoming the center of negotiations. What goods, money, or land would be transferred to seal the deal? How would these assets affect your future life? The weight of these practical concerns could overshadow the more tender hopes of a romantic future. The betrothal announcement was also accompanied by rituals and symbols. A ring might be presented to the bride-to-be, a promise token worn as a visible sign of commitment. Gifts exchanged between families, often practical items like textiles, tools, or livestock, cemented the alliance. Sometimes, a formal feast or celebration followed, with food, drink, and music marking this turning point in the lives of all involved. The feast was a spectacle of merriment and ritual. Roasted meats, freshly baked bread, honeyed mead, and the laughter of neighbors who knew this was a big deal for the families. However, with the joy and ceremony came real anxieties. For the young couple, this was a time of uncertainty. Would you be able to live with this person? What if feelings changed? Could you refuse the match, or was your fate sealed? Betrothal was often binding, and breaking it could have serious social and legal consequences. Your personal wishes might be secondary to family duty, and the idea of lifelong partnership, once announced, could feel overwhelming. Moreover, the announcement marked the beginning of a new social status. Once betrothed, you were no longer a carefree youth but someone preparing for adulthood and family life. Your actions, dress, and behavior came under greater scrutiny. The community expected you to act with more maturity and responsibility. This change could be daunting, especially for those who still long for the freedoms of childhood. Yet, amid all the formality and pressure, betrothal also held a promise, the promise of a shared future. It was the first step toward building a household, perhaps starting a family, and weaving your life into the fabric of your community. In the best cases, it marked the beginning of a partnership filled with affection, mutual respect, and companionship. But even beyond the village and family circle, this announcement could have wider repercussions. Neighboring villages, local lords, and merchants often took note, for marriage alliances shaped power, land ownership, and trade. Political and economic landscapes were subtly redrawn with each new betrothal, reinforcing how personal unions were never just personal. They were a thread in a much larger tapestry. So, imagine standing there as the announcement is made, your name paired with another's, your family's hopes and fears mingling with your own. The eyes of the village upon you, the weight of tradition heavy but also hopeful. It's official now. Your story together begins here. with all its unknown joys and challenges. As you close your eyes tonight, hold on to that moment, the mixture of excitement and terror, the sharp awareness of life's changes, and the fragile hope that love might grow in the soil of obligation. It's a reminder that every story of romance has its serious beginnings, full of promise, doubt, and the quiet courage to face what comes next. The months before the wedding. Planning begins. There will be ills, there will be anxiety. Once the betrothal has been announced, a slow and steady countdown begins. Months filled with busy preparation, buzzing anticipation, and a swirl of emotions that can be equal parts excitement and dread. In medieval times, weddings weren't just personal celebrations. They were major community events that required meticulous planning, negotiation, and an enormous amount of effort from families and neighbors alike. It was a time when every detail mattered and everyone in the village had a role to play. Imagine yourself as the bride or groom-to-be, suddenly swept up into a whirlwind of activity that demands your attention and energy, even if your heart races with nerves. Your family rallies around you, bustling through endless tasks, arranging supplies, sending messengers, and negotiating with villagers and merchants to secure what's needed. The coming months will stretch your patience and test your resolve as you balance the hopes of your loved ones with your own fears and desires. One of the first challenges is the guest list. Unlike today's easy send and receive invitations, medieval invitations were spoken words carried by swift messengers who traveled dusty roads to spread the news. Every neighbor, relative, village elder, and sometimes influential outsiders, like local lords or wealthy merchants, would hear about the upcoming wedding. Deciding who gets invited is a delicate art. Excluding someone risks offending a powerful family, while inviting too many stretches the already limited resources. You learn quickly that social alliances are as important as affection when it comes to choosing guests. Then comes the matter of food, the heart of the celebration. Medieval weddings were famous for their feasts, designed not just to fill bellies but to showcase wealth, generosity, and social standing. Among the array of delicacies, eels hold a special place. These slippery, sinuous creatures were prized for their rich, fatty meat and considered a festive luxury. But catching and preparing eels is no simple task. Skilled villagers spend early mornings setting traps in muddy streams and rivers, and cooks spend hours gutting, cleaning, and roasting them over open flames. Their aroma drifts through the air, mingling with the scent of freshly baked bread, roasted meats, pies filled with seasonal fruits or meats, and strong cheeses aged in cool cellars. Preserving the food presents its own challenges. With no modern refrigeration, timing is everything. A feast depends on fresh ingredients arriving just in time, and the stress of keeping meat from spoiling or bread from going stale weighs heavily on the shoulders of the cooks and hosts. Any mishap could turn celebration into embarrassment, and the social repercussions could ripple through the village for weeks. Entertainment is equally important. Music fills the halls and courtyards as minstrels, troubadours, or local musicians perform songs about love, honor, and adventure. Their tunes ripple through the crowd, encouraging dancing, laughter, and stories. But dancing at medieval weddings is less about elegant steps and more about joyful movement, stomping feet, clapping hands, and the occasional awkward stumble as young and old join together in celebration. The wedding festivities often stretch over several days, a marathon of ceremony, joy, and communal bonding that leaves everyone exhausted but satisfied. For the couple, the months before the wedding are an emotional roller coaster. The bride, often young and inexperienced, is preparing to leave the safety of her childhood home and step into a new role as a wife, household manager, and potentially a mother. The groom must prove his readiness to provide and protect, showing his strength and ability to care for his new family. The weight of expectations presses down on both, their private feelings often overshadowed by the demands of tradition and family duty. Practical concerns dominate much of this time as well. Negotiations about the dowry continue, as families finalize property agreements, monetary gifts, or goods that will transfer with the bride. The bride's trousseau, her collection of linens, clothing, and personal effects, is carefully prepared and packed for the move to her new home. Her skills in sewing, weaving, and household management are tested in these months, a way to prove her worth and readiness for the responsibilities of married life. Anxiety and tension are constant companions. The pressure to please everyone, avoid gossip or scandal, and ensure that every detail, from the wedding dress to the feast's last bite, is perfect, can be overwhelming. Fear of bad omens, sudden illness, or unexpected disputes hover over the preparations, as superstitions and village gossip mingle with real worries. Yet, amid all this tension and toil, there is hope, a quiet, fragile hope that this union will bring joy, love, and partnership. It might be whispered in private moments before sleep or felt as a secret smile shared with a trusted friend. The months before the wedding are a complex tapestry of excitement, duty, fear, and the deeply human desire for connection. So, picture yourself in this time and place, navigating the long road to your wedding day. You're caught between the traditions of your ancestors and the unknown future that awaits. Every eel caught, every loaf of bread baked, every guest invited, every dress sewn, and every song sung builds toward a single moment, the beginning of your new life. And remember, this was more than a party. It was a transformation, a passage from one stage of life to another, full of promise and anxiety, community and intimacy. As you drift off to sleep tonight, let this slow, steady journey settle around you, reminding you that even in the most awkward and stressful moments, hope and love can quietly grow. Church bells and muddy boots. Your wedding day, complete with rain and possibly a pig. At long last, the day you, and your entire village, have been waiting for arrives. In medieval times, a wedding was never just a simple, neat affair. It was a sprawling, loud, and often muddy celebration that stretched from the first light of dawn well into the dark hours of night. The morning begins with the familiar tolling of church bells, their deep, resonant sounds echoing across fields, winding through forests, and rattling down dirt lanes. Those bells serve as both a call and a promise, a summons for everyone to gather and witness the joining of two lives. You wake early, the air thick and cool, heavy with the scent of wet earth and wood smoke. The sky above is a patchwork of slate-gray clouds, hinting at rain but holding off just long enough. Your boots, worn but sturdy, are already smeared with the thick village mud, a lingering gift from recent storms that turned every path, every street, into a slippery challenge. No matter how much you try, muddy boots and wet hems are part of this day's character, woven into the very fabric of medieval celebrations. You might grumble quietly, but there's a strange comfort in this familiar mess. The house is alive with activity. Your family moves like a well-rehearsed dance troupe, mothers smoothing your hair, sisters fussing with your smock, uncles hauling crates filled with ale and supplies, neighbors arriving early to help string wildflowers, ivy, and colorful ribbons around the wooden beams and along the tables. The scent of roasting meat drifts from outside, a tantalizing preview of the feast to come. Perhaps a pig, a hefty, prized animal fattened for months, hangs over a spit, slowly turning, its rich aroma thickening the air. This pig isn't just food. It's a symbol of prosperity, a gift from your family to the community, a tangible sign of generosity and celebration. As you step outside, the village is already stirring. The churchyard fills with neighbors dressed in their best tunics and smocks, though best here is relative, often just cleaner and less worn. The muddy streets bustle with children chasing one another, faces streaked with dirt and laughter. Elders lean on weathered staffs, nodding greetings, while young couples exchange shy glances, perhaps wondering what their own futures might hold. Your heart pounds with a mix of nervousness and excitement as you prepare to take your place in the procession. Inside the church, the priest waits in solemn robes, his voice steady and reassuring as he calls the congregation to worship. The ceremony is a weaving of sacred ritual and old superstitions. Vows are spoken, promises whispered under breath, rings exchanged, simple bands of iron, perhaps twisted wire, symbols heavier in meaning than in material worth. The air is thick with emotion, the silence almost palpable as the couple's hands are bound together with a cloth, a tangible symbol of their new bond. Outside, just as the ceremony concludes, the sky finally releases its hold, and rain begins to fall. Soft at first, then in steady drops, it taps rhythmically on the church's wooden roof and puddles in the dirt below. Guests rush to find shelter under hastily erected awnings, but the rain does little to dampen spirits. If anything, it adds to the day's rustic charm. Muddy boots squelch with every step, dresses cling to legs, and children splash gleefully in puddles, unbothered by wet hems or muddy faces. The feast that follows is a lively, boisterous affair. Long tables, set beneath the protective awnings and around the village square, groan under the weight of hearty fare, roasted meats, thick slabs of bread, bowls of cheese, and fresh vegetables gathered from nearby fields. Ale flows freely from barrels, its bitter tang washing away nerves and awkwardness alike. Guests laugh loudly, shout over the din, and sometimes burst into song or spontaneous dance, their boots slipping in the mud but their spirits soaring. The pig, centerpiece of the meal, is carved with ceremony, its rich meat savored bite by bite. Throughout the day, the wedding is a celebration of more than just the couple. It's a reaffirmation of community, tradition, and resilience. Gifts are exchanged, eggs wrapped in cloth, small tokens woven from straw, simple ribbons braided by loving hands. Stories are told, of knights and maidens, of star-crossed lovers and heroic deeds, woven into the fabric of the gathering, creating a shared history that connects everyone present. As night falls and the fires are lit, the cold creeping into bones, the muddy boots and wet clothes become background noise to the warmth of companionship and laughter. The flickering candlelight casts gentle shadows, and the tired smiles of family and friends reflect a day of joy, hope, and the messy, beautiful reality of medieval life. This wedding day, full of rain, mud, laughter, and yes, perhaps even a pig, is a vivid reminder that love and community are messy, imperfect, but always worth celebrating. As you settle down to sleep tonight, let the echo of church bells, the squelch of muddy boots, and the warmth of shared stories lull you into peaceful dreams. Consummation and confusion. No one explained anything. At all. After the whirlwind of vows, feasts, and village celebrations, the newlyweds finally retreat to the privacy, or what passed for privacy, in their small chamber. But unlike today's world, where romance novels, movies, and school lessons prepare couples for what's next, medieval newlyweds often enter this moment in a fog of uncertainty, awkwardness, and silence. You step cautiously into the dimly lit room. The only light comes from a few flickering candles, their flames casting dancing shadows on the rough, wooden walls. The bed, a simple frame with a mattress stuffed with straw, is draped with coarse linen sheets. The smell of herbs, smoke, and the faint musk of the night air lingers, mixing with your own nervous sweat. There is no handbook, no whispered advice from friends or family. Discussion of sex or intimacy was taboo, shrouded in secrecy, fear, and embarrassment. It was a subject you simply did not speak about openly. No one sat you down to explain what consummation truly meant, or how it was supposed to happen. The priest had solemnly declared your marriage sacred in the church, and now it was up to you and your spouse to make it official, though what that meant was left entirely unspoken. You are expected to understand without guidance. In that quiet chamber, you and your partner may fumble, hands trembling, faces flushed with confusion and nervousness. You exchange shy, uncertain glances, your hearts pounding in unison with the crackling fire in the hearth. The awkwardness fills the room like thick smoke, almost as heavy as the silence that envelopes you. There are no romantic stories or gentle encouragements here, only a vast unknown. Many marriages had been arranged with little thought to personal feelings or chemistry, making this intimate moment all the more bewildering. You might wonder if you are doing something wrong or if your feelings, or lack of them, are normal. The idea of sharing your body, your fears, and your uncertainties with someone you barely know feels both daunting and overwhelming. Occasionally, you may have heard whispered advice from an older relative, a discreet aunt, a midwife, or a neighbor, but even their words were vague and filled with warnings rather than clear instructions. Myths and superstitions filled the gaps in your understanding. Perhaps you had been told that the bride's virginity was a sacred treasure, one that must be carefully guarded or immediately given as proof of love and loyalty. Maybe you feared that if the consummation did not happen soon, the marriage itself might be invalidated or cursed. Some couples approached this moment as a duty, a necessary step to secure heirs, property, and alliances. The act could be rushed, mechanical, almost clinical. For others, it was a slow, tentative dance of discovery, learning to trust, to understand, and to find comfort in one another's presence despite the lingering confusion. But always, the absence of open conversation made the moment strange, uncertain, and deeply private in a way that could feel isolating. Outside your chamber, the village is quiet. The recent rains have left the earth damp and cool. The scent of wet leaves and moss creeps through the cracks in the wooden shutters. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hoots softly, and the muffled sounds of animals settling for the night float through the air. Inside, you and your partner share the warmth of the firelight, a fragile connection amidst the unknown. You might find yourselves exchanging awkward smiles or gentle touches, silent questions hanging between you like a fragile thread. The night stretches long and slow, filled with both hope and hesitation. And though the path to intimacy begins with confusion and silence, it is also the first step towards something deeper: trust, understanding, and perhaps, in time, love. So as you settle down to rest tonight, let the flickering candlelight and the quiet whispers of history lull you. Imagine the tentative steps of those medieval couples, lost but brave, learning to navigate the unknown. Their stories, full of awkward beginnings and growing warmth, remind us that love, even in its most confusing moments, is a journey worth taking. Living with your in-laws. Because love means sharing one room with 8 people and 2 goats. Imagine, after the wedding day's excitement fades, you find yourself stepping into a new chapter of life that is less about romantic whispers and more about crowded spaces, loud voices, and the constant presence of family, your in-laws. In the medieval world, newlyweds rarely lived alone. Privacy was a rare luxury, often non-existent. Instead, you shared your humble home with multiple generations, dozens of daily tasks, and yes, sometimes even a couple of goats. Your home is likely a single-room cottage, filled with the scents of wood smoke, stew, and animals. The walls are thick with the stories and tensions of those who came before you. The floor is uneven dirt or worn stone, and the beds are packed close together, separated only by hanging cloth or wooden partitions. You learn quickly that space is precious, and personal boundaries are more of a suggestion than a rule. Your in-laws, your spouse's parents, siblings, and sometimes even their cousins, are always near. They have opinions about everything: how you cook, how you clean, how you behave. Their eyes follow your every move, not out of malice, but because family is the center of medieval life, and everyone's role is intertwined. You're not just marrying your spouse, you're joining a whole network of relationships, obligations, and expectations. The noise never truly stops. Babies cry, goats bleat, pots clatter, and voices rise in debate over the day's chores or the upcoming harvest. You learn to find quiet moments in the chaos, perhaps an early morning before the village stirs, or late at night when the fire burns low, and the world outside has gone still. Meals are communal affairs, often simple but hearty: thick bread, cheese, pottage, and whatever vegetables or salted meat are available. Eating together is a daily reminder of your place within the family and the wider village. Sharing food, stories, and work builds bonds, but it also means your private thoughts and feelings must sometimes be tucked away, held close like a secret treasure. There are moments of tenderness too. Of course, when your spouse steals a quiet glance across the room, or when a younger sibling shares a smile, easing the tension. Love, in this setting, is not just the spark of romance but the slow, steady thread woven through daily life, through shared hardship, laughter, and the endless cycle of seasons. So tonight, as you close your eyes, picture that small, bustling cottage. Hear the muffled sounds of family life, the gentle snore of an elder, the soft bleating of goats resting in the corner, the crackling fire that warms the cold stone floor. Feel the closeness, the chaos, and the unexpected comfort of living surrounded by those who matter, even when space is tight and patience is tested. In medieval times, love meant more than stolen kisses. It meant community, connection, and the messy, beautiful reality of sharing life with your in-laws, 8 people, 2 goats, and all. Married life begins. So, the wedding bells have rung, the feasts have ended, and now the real journey begins, married life. But don't imagine endless candlelit dinners or sweet nothings whispered under starlit skies. For most medieval couples, marriage was less about grand romance and more about the steady rhythm of everyday survival, shared chores, and small, quiet moments of tenderness. Your mornings start early, often before the sun rises, when the air is still cool and the village is wrapped in a gentle hush. The smell of damp earth, wood smoke, and fresh hay drifts in through the open windows, mingling with the faint, comforting scent of worn linen and herbs drying from the rafters. Roosters crow somewhere nearby, a natural alarm clock calling you to the day ahead. You rise from a bed stuffed with straw or feathers, stiff from sleep but ready for the work that awaits. There's no time to linger or daydream, the fields won't tend themselves. You dress quickly in homespun wool or linen, garments coarse but sturdy, meant to endure hours bent over soil or trudging through mud. Turnips, potatoes, onions, these humble vegetables are more than just food, they are the backbone of your survival. You learn their seasons well, when to plant, when to harvest, when to store in the cool, dark cellar to last through the biting winter months. Each meal you prepare is practical, filling, and designed to give you strength to face the relentless cycle of chores. Cooking is a communal affair, often done over a fire or in a small hearth, with pots clanking softly and smoke curling up the chimney. The menu rarely changes: stews simmered with root vegetables, coarse bread fresh from the bakehouse, and occasionally salted pork or cheese from the local farm. It's far from gourmet, but nourishing all the same. Between these daily tasks, there are moments, fleeting but precious, when you catch your spouse's eye across the crowded kitchen or the muddy yard. Perhaps a shy smile, a brief touch on a sleeve, or a shared laugh over a spilled bucket of water. Affection in medieval marriage is rarely grand or overt. It's woven quietly through shared experiences, small acts of kindness, and the comfort of being understood without words. Marriage is a partnership forged in the fires of daily life. You rely on one another to weather not just the seasons but the endless demands of family, village politics, and the ever-present threat of illness or misfortune. Together you tend the animals, mend fences, gather firewood, and prepare the home that will shelter you through many years. Sometimes, you feel the weight of exhaustion pressing down like the heavy wool cloak you wear in winter. Long days blur into each other, rising before dawn, working until dusk, and resting only to rise again. Yet, in those quiet evenings, as the fire's glow flickers softly against the stone walls, you find a peaceful rhythm. You sit side by side, sharing warmth and the simple comfort of presence, even if words are few. There's laughter too, unexpected and bright, like the sound of children playing or a village festivity heard in the distance. Moments of joy remind you that even amid hardship, life is rich with connection and belonging. The slow building of trust, understanding, and affection grows stronger with each shared chore. Each meal, and each tired but contented sigh. So tonight, as you close your eyes, picture the small cottage bathed in moonlight. Hear the soft crackle of the dying fire, the rustle of straw beneath you, and the gentle breathing of your spouse beside you. Outside, the village sleeps under a blanket of stars, the world quiet except for the occasional bleat of a goat or the whisper of wind through the trees. In this humble home, filled with the smells and sounds of daily life, you build something lasting. It's not always easy, and it's rarely dramatic. But in the simple turnips, the endless chores, and those occasional, tender moments of mild affection, married life begins, a slow, steady dance of survival and companionship. Arguments and apologies, medieval style. Grunting. Silence. Maybe some bread thrown. Even in the quietest corners of a medieval village, married life was not always a smooth path paved with sweet words and gentle touches. No, sometimes the small cottage you share with your spouse becomes a stage for the subtle, quiet drama of disagreements. These were not the kind of loud, heated arguments you might imagine from later times. Instead, they were low murmurs, grumbles, and often a heavy silence that spoke louder than any shout. Picture this. The day's work has left you both weary, backs spent from tilling fields, hands rough from tending animals, minds tired from endless chores. The fire in your humble hearth crackles softly, casting dancing shadows on the worn wooden walls of your home. Outside, the wind rustles the trees, and the village begins to settle into the calm of evening. But inside, there is a tension, barely spoken, hanging in the air like the faint smoke from the dying embers. Perhaps it started with something small, a forgotten task, a meal not quite right, or a miscommunication that might seem trivial now but felt like a mountain then. Instead of words flying like arrows, there are grunts and sighs, a few sharp glances exchanged across the rough-hewn table. Silence stretches between you both, thick and heavy, as if either wants to be the first to break it. This silence is loud in its own way, filled with frustration, pride, and unspoken feelings. Sometimes, in this quiet battlefield, words fail. The medieval couple doesn't always find the language to express their anger or disappointment clearly. Instead, the emotions manifest in small, physical ways: a slammed wooden door, a chair pushed back too hard, or, if things get playful yet tense, a piece of bread tossed gently across the room. Yes, bread. The staple of life and sometimes an unintended weapon of apology or mock protest. That thrown loaf, usually stale and soft enough not to hurt, carries its own message. It says, "I'm annoyed, but I still care." It's a gesture that blends frustration and affection, wrapped in the practicality of everyday life. It's also a reminder that even in moments of discord, life goes on, and the bond between two people, however tested, endures. Apologies, when they come, are rarely dramatic or loud. They are quiet, humble, and often expressed through actions rather than speech. Maybe it's a hand reaching out from across the table, a small smile breaking the tension, or the simple act of helping with a chore previously neglected. Together, you might mend a broken tool, fetch water from the well, or tend to the animals, each shared task softening the hard edges of disagreement. These moments of reconciliation are woven into the fabric of daily life, small, tender patches in a tapestry of survival and partnership. The rhythm of chores, meals, and rest carries you both forward, teaching patience, forgiveness, and the unspoken understanding that no partnership is perfect, but it can still be strong. So, as you settle into the quiet of the night, imagine yourself sitting beside your spouse in your humble home. The fire's glow is dim, the air is filled with the comforting smells of burning wood and earth, and the soft straw beneath you feels warm. The memory of a thrown loaf of bread brings a faint smile, an emblem of human imperfection, connection, and love in its simplest form. Let your breath slow, your muscles relax, and your mind drift gently to the comforting idea that even in moments of grumbling and silence, there is a deep, enduring bond holding you close. The arguments fade into the background as the night grows quiet, and the peacefulness of shared life settles softly around you both. Staying in love without baths. How to feel romantic while smelling like damp hay. In the medieval world, the idea of a daily bath was as rare as a sunny day in the middle of a rainstorm. Water was precious and bathing a luxury few could afford regularly. So, couples in love had to find other ways to feel close, connected, and romantic, even when the scent of damp hay and the earth clung stubbornly to their skin and clothes. Imagine you and your beloved returning after a long day of working in the fields or tending the animals. Your clothes are dusty, your hands scratched by thorns, and your hair tangled with bits of straw. The hearth is warm, but the bath water is only a dream, something whispered about in stories told by traveling minstrels or monks far away in their monasteries. So how did you keep the flame of affection glowing in such circumstances? It started with the small, tender moments. The gentle touch of a rough hand brushing hair away from a weary face. The quiet laughter shared over a clumsy attempt to share the last piece of bread. Or the comforting weight of an arm around your shoulders as you both sit down to rest. Romance in the medieval countryside wasn't about perfumes or fancy baths. It was about presence, understanding, and the warmth that came from simply being together. You learned to appreciate the softness of a hand calloused by work, the sparkle in tired eyes, and the way someone's voice could soothe even the most aching muscles. There were no scented candles or bubble baths, but there were moments of closeness by the fire, where stories were whispered, dreams shared, and futures quietly planned. In the flickering light, the smells of earth and hay became part of your shared world, a reminder of the life you built together, a life full of hard work, laughter, and simple joys. And sometimes, romance was found in the practical acts of care, helping one another scrub dirt from hands using rough cloths, braiding hair to keep it tidy, or sharing a simple meal by candlelight. These acts, small and unpretentious, were the glue that held love steady when the comforts of modern hygiene were far beyond reach. So tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine the feel of rough linen against your skin, the soft crackle of the hearth, and the steady presence of someone you care for nearby. Feel the warmth of shared love, unpolished and real, carried through every touch and every quiet moment. Smelling like damp hay might not be glamorous, but in the soft glow of affection, it becomes a scent of home, comfort, and enduring connection. Love, loss, and leprosy. Not every story has a fairy tale ending, but it does have character. In the medieval world, love was a fragile, delicate thing, bright and full of hope, yet often shadowed by the harsh realities of life. Not every story ended in a joyful union or a peaceful home. Sometimes, love was tested by forces beyond control, poverty, war, hunger, and disease. Among these, leprosy was one of the most feared and misunderstood afflictions, casting a long, dark shadow over the lives of many. Imagine a young couple, their hands entwined in the warm light of a fading day. Their smiles hold promises, their hearts full of dreams for a shared future. They live in a quiet village where everyone knows each other's names and stories. But soon, a change begins, a cough that won't go away, patches on the skin that cause whispers and glances filled with fear. The shadow of leprosy falls between them, slowly but surely. Leprosy was not just a disease, it was a sentence to isolation. Those who showed its signs were often sent away to remote leper colonies, forced to leave behind family, friends, and the life they knew. For lovers, this separation was agonizing. The once close, warm presence became a distant memory, and love had to survive in absence, carried by hope and fragile letters. In these colonies, the afflicted lived with their suffering and loneliness. Their love stories interrupted but not erased. Some held on to the hope of reunion, sending tokens and messages through trusted visitors, while others found comfort in the bonds formed with fellow sufferers, sharing stories and dreams beneath the wide, indifferent sky. For those left behind, grief was mingled with guilt and helplessness. Families struggled to care for the sick while shielding themselves from the fear that leprosy inspired. Love, in such times, transformed, becoming less about physical closeness and more about emotional endurance. It was found in the quiet prayers whispered at dawn, the soft tears shed in solitude, and the faint memory of a touch long gone. These stories may not sparkle with the brightness of fairy tales, but they are rich with character, depth, and the raw truth of human experience. They remind us that love is not only about perfect moments of joy but also about the courage to endure pain, separation, and loss. It is about the quiet strength found in hearts that refuse to give up, even when everything seems lost. So, as you lie down to rest tonight, let your mind wander gently to those quiet acts of love and bravery, to the softness beneath the sorrow, and the light that never truly fades. Let the story of love and loss, painted with the hues of medieval life, cradle you into a peaceful sleep filled with understanding and compassion. Growing old together, sort of. You survive. That's the most romantic part of all. In the gentle, unhurried rhythm of medieval life, growing old together was one of the rarest, most precious achievements. It wasn't about grand displays or perfect moments captured in time. Instead, it was about enduring, the slow, steady act of surviving through the cold winters, the hungry seasons, the endless chores, and the many hardships that shaped every day. Love, in that world, was quieter, sometimes rougher, but deeply rooted in resilience and shared history. Picture two people who have walked side by side through decades, countless mornings waking to the crowing of roosters, their breath visible in the crisp dawn air, and endless evenings spent by the flickering light of a hearth. Their hands, worn by work and time, still find each other in the dark. Their faces tell stories of laughter and tears, of sorrow and hope, marked with lines and soft wrinkles that only time can carve. This love isn't always easy or sweet-smelling like the flowers of a spring meadow. Often, it's in the grunt of understanding, the quiet nod as they pass in their small cottage filled with the smell of wood smoke, damp earth, and the lingering aroma of stew. It's in the way they share the weight of daily struggles, the hard labor in the fields, the worries for children, the illnesses that come and go. But there is a profound beauty in this endurance. To have someone who has seen you at your worst, your most vulnerable, and still chooses to stay, this is the truest form of love. In a world where life was fragile and uncertain, where death and hardship could come suddenly, simply continuing on together was a victory. It was the quietest, most steadfast romance imaginable. You survive the long nights when sleep is hard to find, the weary days when your body aches and the future feels uncertain. You survive the losses that shake your soul and the fleeting moments of joy that remind you why you hold on. In surviving, you weave a shared story, a tapestry made from countless small, imperfect moments that together create something enduring and beautiful. As we close this final chapter in our slow, sandy journey through the strange and often itchy world of medieval dating, remember this: romance is not always about fireworks or fairy tales. Sometimes, it's about the courage to face life's storms together, the comfort of a steady hand in the dark, and the warmth of a presence that does not waver when all else does. Thank you so much for spending this time here in the quietest corner of history with me, here at Quiet Story. As you prepare to drift off into sleep, take a deep breath in, and slowly let it go. Feel the calm wash over you, the gentle quiet of your own space, and the soft glow of shared stories. Where are you watching from tonight? How long does it usually take you to fall asleep? If you feel like sharing, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. This quiet community is made special by your presence, your stories, and your calm company. May your dreams be soft and sweet, your heart full of peace, and your night filled with rest. Until we meet again on this gentle path through history, good night, and sleep well.